Welcome into a Week 10 Giants Hangout brought to you by Crestron. Madeline Burke hanging out with Russ Salzberg and Matt Sytek this week. And guys, we are in the back nine of the season, the second half of the season. Obviously, the first half didn't get off to the start the Giants wanted at 2-7. Heading to Germany this week to face the Carolina Panthers. But first, Russ, one of the things that has really stood out in this first half of this season is the struggles that this Giants team has seen on third down situations.
Madeline, this game frustrated. There's been a lot of frustrating moments for us who cover the Giants, as we know, but this one, I kind of just threw my hands up and listen, you, myself, and Matt discussed it last week. I mean, the inability on third down to get off the field or not give up the explosive play and just a sense of, okay, here's a chance for us to do something. And unfortunately, they don't do it, and I don't know what it is. It's easy to sit back and say this is a problem of that. I don't know if it's a lack of a sense of urgency. We got to get something done now. 3rd and 18. What was it? 3rd and 18 with 20 seconds to go in a half. It was just an out pass that Daniels was throwing. I think it was Eckler, and it goes for. He was just looking to get into field goal position. It goes for 24 yards. I mean, you can't have that stuff happen. And listen, Dave's didn't pull any punches in the post game. Those plays are killers. And then, late in the game, it's 2nd and 9. You give up a 42-yard play, and it's not just a 42-yard play where it was close. The guy's running by himself. I was flabbergasted. And unfortunate. What's so unfortunate about it, the offense showed us signs. Daniel showed us things. The running game showed us things. But, we hear all the time, you talk about it, Matt talks about it, I talk about it, the coaches talk about it, players talk about it. Complementary football. And you know what? They don't play. They play uncomplimentary football, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke last week about how explosive plays were going to play, just a very big part in last Sunday's game. Honestly, just about every game. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I mean, Daniel Jones, he did complete a pass with 20 or more air yards. That was the touchdown pass to Theo Johnson late in the game. Great throw, great catch, great play. But that was only one of 2 deep passes that Daniel Jones attempted the entire game. Now, he did have some success in the intermediate, 10 to 19 yards down the field. For that, he was 6 of 8 for 91 yards. But, you're going to need more than 2 deep shots down the field in order to create these explosive plays and to keep the defense honest and make them have to respect the deep shot, which will open things up in the run game like we spoke about last week. You look at the other side, Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. Jaden Daniels attempted 3 passes, 20 or more yards down the field, completed all 3 of them for 91 yards and a touchdown. And in my opinion, that played a big part in determining the outcome of Sunday's game. Now, the Giants did get some big, I would say, explosive plays in the run game between Daniel Jones, Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary, and Darius Slayton. 4 players had a run of 10 or more yards, which that is great. In the run game was great against the Commanders. However, the passing game, there wasn't enough there. And Daniel Jones had a decent game. I mean, 2 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, no interceptions. He finished with a strong passer rating, but going up against that high-powered Commanders offense, we needed to see a little bit more from the passing game than what we did.
And you mentioned, though, that he did have a strong game, and a lot of it was because they established the run early. I mean, those first couple of drives were almost exclusively run plays, and the Giants had 115 rushing yards in the first quarter alone, and that was something that, was working for them getting the ball down the field.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought up the run game because after Washington took a 7-0 lead, there go the Giants on, what was it, a 9-minute and 43-second drive with it was like 17 plays. I think 16 of them were the run. And, people were questioning Dave's after the game. Well, did you not have confidence in the passing? And Dave's brought it out. I'm averaging 7 yards a carry. It's all working. What drove me crazy on that So here you had a 9 minute and I think it was 9:43 drive. They
Yep.
tied the game up. So now you know your defense, your own defense, was on the sideline for a long time, getting a nice rest. Sense of urgency, maybe. Okay, our guys just pulled us even. What happens? They answer back right away. Washington does, and it's 14-7, just like in a finger snap.
Well, and then
The
that's
things
kind of
that
the
can't
opposite
happen.
of the narrative that we've seen, from previous games. Usually we're talking about, oh, the defense did enough for this team to get a win, but the offense, fell short. This week we saw the offense clicking. The Giants put up points. They had 3 touchdowns, 2 passing and a rushing from Daniel Jones at MetLife Stadium. And Dexter Lawrence, after the game, said the offense did enough to win this game and the defense didn't. So, it seems like that at some point we want to see these two units or all three really get on the same page.
And we did kind of start to see that in the second half of this game against the Commanders. I mean, the Giants had 3 drives in the second half. They scored points on all 3 of them. They had a field goal and then the 2 touchdown drives. And on the other side of the ball, the Commanders in the first half, anytime they got into the red zone, they punched it in for a touchdown. In the second half, though, the Giants held them the first drive, a quick 3 and out. Then they held them to 2 straight field goals when the Commanders got deep into the red zone. Now, unfortunately, when the Giants, not unfortunately, the Giants responded with those 2 field goal drives with touchdown drives of their own, which is what got them back into the game. And unfortunately, when the defense, needed to come up with one last stop to get the Giants the ball back with a chance to win the game at the end, that is when, they kind of were unable to stop the Commanders. The Commanders got the ball all the way down to the 1 yard line and then just kneeled it out. But for the most of the second half, we did start to see this complementary football that we've been talking about. It's just going into halftime down 21-7. It didn't really matter how well they played in the second half. They dug themselves into too far of a hole.
Yeah, and as you said, yeah, we saw some of that complementary football in the second half, but not enough of it. And quite frankly, you can't win if you see that complementary football sporadically. It's got to be on a consistent basis. I'm to me, it is a real head scratcher. I don't understand why. I'm saying to myself, because we're in the locker room, we see these guys. They care. They do pay attention to detail. But when it's crunch time, it seems that it lacks on the attention to detail. There's one thing about getting beat on a bomb, on a great play. There's another thing seeing somebody running wide open, like by himself, like he's running through a pasture someplace. That has to change. That has to change. And I'm sure the coaches are going to hammer it into them before they get on a plane going to Munich.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it's a short week, not in terms of game to game, but in terms of practice, because the Giants usually travel on a Saturday to get to their destination to play on Sunday. The Giants are leaving Thursday night to Munich. They'll fly overnight, land Friday morning, get right to practice Friday to try to acclimate to local time. And then, of course, playing the Carolina Panthers Sunday, 9:30 a.m. is the Eastern local time that will be kicked off. And this is a game, the Panthers coming off a win. Bryce Young back under center after Andy Dalton got hurt. They got the win over the Saints in week 9. And, Bryce Young's looking to put together back-to-back wins for the first time in his career. Panthers defense is the last ranked defense in the league. This is a game in which you look at and you've got 2-7 teams. Okay, this is a fight in your weight class. Can the Giants get this win and kind of develop some momentum heading into the bye week, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, look, on paper, this is just about as good of a matchup as you could ask for a Giants team that is in need of a win. I mean, the Panthers defense, as you mentioned, they rank dead last in both points and yards allowed. Their passing defense, ranks 25th. They've given up the 4th most passing touchdowns. The run game ranks dead last. They've given up the most rushing yards allowed in the entire NFL. Now, a big part of that is because they've been down just about every single week, and then the opponents sort of abandon the passing game and just run out the clock. But nonetheless, this is just a fantastic matchup on paper for the Giants. And the area that I am most, I guess, interested to see if the Giants can take advantage of is the turnovers. I mean, this Carolina Panthers offense turns the ball over a lot. They have 15 turnovers on offense. And I will say, as great as the Giants defense has been playing, the one area that they haven't fully, I think, reached their potential yet is the turnovers. I mean, we've
They had
had the Giants have
one. They've had
one
one in week
interception.
one with Darius Muasso. Yeah.
Yep, that's the only interception, and it came from, the rookie 6th-round pick linebacker in week one. So, especially going up against Bryce Young, who, granted, coming off a win, played a lot better last week than he did in the first couple of games of the season. But this is still a quarterback that, maybe doesn't feel completely comfortable back there and is prone to throwing the ball away and creating turnovers. So that will be an area. If the Giants can force multiple takeaways on the defensive side of the ball, then they're going to be set up very well in this game.
Matt, all the points that you just brought up, they're all great points. The key thing that you said, on paper, it's a great matchup. We don't win games on paper. You have
Very
to
true.
win games on the field. And that is a problem that they have to deal with. While we're talking about Germany, I wonder, and we don't know until they get there, but I remember I went the very first year when the NFL played in London. Giants were playing the Dolphins, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the game was at Wembley. I'm not 100% sure, but the one thing that I remember, that field, soccer field, was extremely slick. It was almost, to me, like a putting green. It was that slick, and I just wonder, those kind of issues can become a factor when you get there, in particular in the running game. I'm not saying that is going to be the case, but it certainly was the case the very first time they went to London. This is Germany, but if you haven't played on that field, you don't know. Things like that could be an issue.
Well, and the expression even playing field, quite literally this time, it is the same field for both teams. So if it is an issue, luckily it'll be
Yeah.
both teams that are navigating it. And I'm sure the equipment staff will come with the appropriate footwear and all that kind of stuff for the teams to make sure to navigate it.
We'll
But
say
it's
the
good.
Giants are 3-0 in their games in Europe so far.
There you
So
go. That's a
while the
good
fields,
stat.
while
That's
the
a good.
fields may not be ideal, it hasn't slowed the Giants down in the past. So hopefully there's more of that on Sunday.
There you go. There you go. This will be the first one in Germany, though. So this will be a new frontier for the Giants. German fans have been really excited about it. I know that they've been, producing a lot of content for them out there, and I know that'll be fun just to have an environment like that. But also, I think anytime traveling a trip like this is really good for team building and morale. I mean, I remember, in training camp when you go away for a week, or you go do joint training camp practices with another team, and the entire group kind of travels as a whole. You're forced to spend more time together. You've got, instead of just spending time during the day and then going home to your family, going home to your life or whatever, you're kind of in this unit for days at a time. And that really builds teamwork in a way that I think for this Giants team going through the adversity that they are of this season is going to be beneficial, Matt.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, I think that this game and this trip to Germany couldn't come at a better time, in the sense that you just spoke of, because the trade deadline just passed and the Giants did not trade away any of the players that there were a lot of rumors about that might get dealt away from this Giants team. The Giants held on to them. I'm talking about, the Azeez Ojularis, the Darius Slaytons. Those guys are still here. And I think that kind of sends a message to the locker room like, hey, we're not just waving the white flag and giving up on this year. We want to keep winning football games. And we have the players here to do it. We just need to put it all together. And so, again, this trip to Europe, facing this Panthers team, this could be a thing that, sort of sparks this Giants team as they go into the bye week and then enter a second half of the season where you never know what could happen. You got to take it one game at a time. And I agree. I think that this trip to Europe could end up being very beneficial to this Giants team.
Well, and
Yeah,
quickly though, but while they didn't trade away any players, the Giants did release Nick McLeod, the corner, as they were negotiating, contract restructuring or whatnot, which is going to be an interesting approach considering, how shorthanded they are at the position with injuries right now, Russ.
Yeah, no, that's just what I was going to bring up. We have to wait and see on that. The points that you bring up, both of you, about on the road, and a lot of teams, guys do get together on the road. It does build, but there's not a morale problem on this team. We
No.
see it every day. There's not a morale problem. It just maybe it's good for them to get away coming off that loss. The only thing that I will say, and I agree with Matt, that it is the trip could be coming at the right time, but always remember that trip is a bear of a trip. And as you say, Madeline, it's a shorter week. Their schedule has changed. So you don't know how that's going to affect them. I would say this after what just happened, and we were in that locker room after the game watching Dexter and Burns sitting on the floor talking just amongst themselves. You can tell that they were ticked off. They were angry. They were frustrated. They expect themselves to be better than this. And, now it's time to, should say put up or shut up, but they need to do it this week.
Yeah. What's the boxing analogy, Russ?
Yeah, it's great when we were texting, hit with bad intentions. But you know what? That's when you sent that to me using my expression, I laughed because I talk about it that Tyrone Tracy runs that way. He
Right.
runs with bad intentions. But the defense has to, and I don't mean hurt somebody. And the one thing that we haven't addressed a lot in this conversation, tackling. That's another thing. You give up big plays, but the tackling, they don't have to be that big a play if the tackling's, properly done. And it's not. Now, I would say this. It's not just Giants. That's across the board in the National Football League. I think it's got to do with practice time and what they're allowed to do. But tackling has been a problem as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say, tackling against the Commanders was certainly an issue. The pass rush, which is, I feel like, carried this Giants defense the first 9 weeks of the season, 8 weeks of the season. They didn't get to Jayden Daniels at all this past Sunday. I mean, 0 sacks, only a handful of pressures. And Dexter Lawrence, who obviously is now second in the NFL in sacks, but leads the Giants in sacks, was held without a sack, was held without a pressure for the first time all season. I will say, especially with, how you said Dexter was in the locker room after the game, I would expect him, of all people, to come out this Sunday in Germany with his hair on fire.
Yep.
And looking to get after Bryce Young or Andy Dalton, whoever it is at quarterback for the Panthers, because they haven't announced yet. I expect him to be super aggressive in getting after that quarterback. And I think he will get back into the sack column this week.
Oh, I expect him to be ornery, and not just him. I expect the Burns to be the same way. They were angry. They were angry at themselves. They weren't angry at anybody else. They were angry at themselves. They want to get this done. They look at themselves. We're better football players than this. We're making big money. Burns and Dexy are making big money. They accept the responsibility of the position they're in, and they were disappointed with the net result last week. So go and prove it. Don't talk about it. Show me. What Tom Coughlin used to say: "Talk is cheap. Play the game. Talk is cheap. Play the game."
Actions
and this is Burns,
louder.
Burns going up against his former team as well. So I wouldn't expect him to be pretty fired up for this game too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like you mentioned, the team that came into week 9 leading the league in sacks, not getting a single one. I think that they do take pride in that, and they're going to be trying to put some pressure on Bryce Young or Andy Dalton, as you mentioned, whomever it is under center for Carolina, in Germany, in an entirely new environment, and in in a week that it's going to be taxing with a lot of travel and a lot of change in time zones and hours, and it'll be a good one to go into the bye week after, and hopefully it's a win for the Giants to get some good momentum heading into the unofficial second half of their season after the bye. But we're going to be continuing to monitor it and keeping up with all the latest on Giants.com. That's a wrap for our Week 10 Giants Hangout, brought to you by Crestron. For Matt Sytek and Russ Salzberg, I'm Madeline Burke. We'll see you next time.